Awesome. Good afternoon, Central Falls. My name is. Oh, is this a formal meeting?
Yes.
Well, then I should step back. I thought we were doing it before the meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Central Falls City Council special meeting Monday, January 12, at 5 p.m. Roll call.
Councilperson Baena.
Present.
Councilperson Kazarian. Present. Councilperson Teguero.
Present.
Councilperson Invasudo.
Present.
Councilperson Rosado. Martinez is out. And Councilperson Solano.
Present.
Councilperson Perry is out. We have one. Next on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the Rhode Island Ethics Commission, introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and Rhode Island Code of Ethics. We have a representative here from the Code, or from the Ethics Commission to conduct the training process.
Did I follow it up? No, I don't. It was working. It was working. Okay, just need a moment. I can still do my little introduction. Sorry to have stepped on your toes. I thought we were doing this first. We are, it's just the meeting. My name is Lynn Radicius. I am a staff attorney and education coordinator of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. I'm very grateful to be here. It's been some time since I've been in Central Falls. I want to thank both Lorraine and Alberto and the council for having me and you for attending. Actually, everyone's got copies. So worst case scenario is I've got to pull out my own copy and we go from there, but we'll just have this and you try it for now. So this is indeed an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and the Code of Ethics, okay? It's big picture stuff. There's no test at the end. You don't have to memorize any of this. There is nothing, thank you, my friend. There is nothing you will hear during this presentation that you can't access at a later date. I am happy to answer questions. I usually ask a favor, and that's if you could hold your questions till the end. There's a couple of reasons. One, I want to keep things moving. I want you to have a little break before 6 o'clock. And two, 98% of the time, the question that you have your hand raised to ask is in the next slide. And if it's not, it's coming up. So I'm happy to answer questions, preferably at the end. That having been said, if you simply can't go on until your question's answered, it's a small group, raise your hand, I'll do my best. Okay, so with that, let's see. There we go. Take a look at Article 3, Section 7. This is from our state constitution, okay? It's not actually part of the Code of Ethics, but the Ethics Commission very much embraces this particular piece from our constitution, which states, the people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety, we'll talk more about that, and not use their position, their public position that is, for private gain or advantage. This is what our Constitution asks of us. All right, so this is on an automatic timer, so I'll have to work with this as best I can. A little bit about ethical conduct in general before we get to the code. Ethics is a standard or philosophy of right and wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So ethical conduct is often described as the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances. But the problem with that is people have different ideas about what makes behavior right or wrong, okay? We have something called ethics based on culture. Maybe you've heard the expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Many people think that whether something's ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. This is the way we've always done things around here. It must be ethical. Well, maybe, maybe not. Ethics based on culture is not the standard by which ethical behavior is measured at the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. So how about ethics based on consequences? That's where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the outcome. And ethical conduct is behavior that produces more positive results than negative results in both quantity and quality. That's one way of doing things, but it is not the Ethics Commission's way of doing things. So how about ethics based on character? That's where ethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under these circumstances? Right, the focus there is on one's character, one's motives. I'm a fine, upstanding citizen. How could I possibly violate something called the Code of Ethics? Even character is not the standard by which ethical behavior is measured at the Ethics Commission. So what do we ask? We ask you to please focus on your action and forget the result, because the Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid, without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Ethical or unethical conduct is determined not by looking at the results, but by looking at the conduct itself and judging its inherent rightness or wrongness that way. A little bit about the makeup of Rhode Island's Ethics Commission before we jump into the actual code. There are 9 members of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. They are all appointed by the governor. The governor selects 4 people of their own choice. And the governor also seats the other 5 people on the Ethics Commission, but does so from lists of 5 names that have been submitted by leaders from both the House and the Senate, depending on whose turn it is to make a recommendation. And right now, I'm very happy to report that for the first time in a long time, for about the past year, we have all 9 seats filled on the Ethics Commission. It wasn't always like that. It might have been 7, or at one time 6, and we couldn't reach a quorum. Now we have 9. And what's wonderful is they're not always in perfect agreement, which makes for interesting conversation and very good thinking, right? And different approaches. Okay. One more thing. Come on, Lynn. Of interest to you about the Ethics Commission might be the following. No member of the Ethics Commission may hold or campaign for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or on any political committee, nor may they participate in or even contribute to a political campaign, not so much as a sign on the front lawn of an ethics commission or at election time. And the Ethics Commission is pretty powerful. They have advisory, investigative, adjudicative, and in some instances, removal powers. Alrighty. I am a member of the Ethics Commission staff. I work for the Ethics Commission. Our executive director and chief prosecutor is a gentleman named Jason Grammett. He's been the executive director since April of 2018, and prior to that, held my job for about 20 years. This guy knows the code up one side and down the other. Jason and I are 2 of 5 attorneys on staff. We have 3 investigators. They are all former police officers, detectives. They know their way around an investigation. We have an incredible support staff. A name you might want to remember is Michelle Berg. She is our financial disclosure officer. She's the one that sends you out reminder after reminder after reminder to complete financial disclosure. There are 12 of us that work at the Ethics Commission. We hang out at 40 Fountain Street in Providence. And there is a slide in your packet with our contact information. So who's subject to the Code of Ethics? Here's an actual copy of it in hard form, this little book here. All state and municipal elected officials are subject to the code, as are all state and municipal appointed officials, and all employees of state and local government, and members of boards, commissions, and agencies. A lot of people subject to the code in this state. So, conflicts of interest. This is the first topic that I cover from the actual code, the rule book, and I do that because it's such a big piece of the Code of Ethics. Quite frankly, conflicts of interest and nepotism are the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. So that's why we focus on those. There are other things we'll cover, but let's jump into conflicts of interest. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics. You may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties for Central Falls if it is reasonably foreseeable. Let's stop right there and figure out what that means. Reasonably foreseeable under the Code of Ethics means that a conflict of interest is more than conceivable and less than certain to occur. That is a big window, right? So if it's reasonably foreseeable that you, any person in your family, I'll tell you who I mean by that, your business associate, I'll tell you who I mean by that, or any private business by which you are employed, if anyone in that group, you, family member, business associate, private employer, if they will derive a direct monetary gain or even suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of your participation in a matter, you can't take part. You've got to recuse because you have a conflict of interest. So, what do I mean by family members? As far as the Code of Ethics is concerned, the following are your family members, whether by blood, marriage, or adoption: spouse, parents, children, siblings, grandparents and grandchildren, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and your first cousins. Those are your family members under the code. So someone might say, Lynn, I haven't spoken to my sister in 7 years. If she comes before me in my capacity as public servant for the city of Central Falls, no worries. I would no more go out of my way to help her than I would to hurt her. I'll treat her like I would anybody else. So that's not a conflict, right? Well, guess what it is? Exactly. A family member is a family member is a family member regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. Right? That cousin you met at a wedding 15 years ago and haven't seen since, that person comes before you in your public capacity, it's your relative, you have to recuse, you have a conflict. Okay? So let's say that person who's fighting with her sister says to me, I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I ever was to my sister. If my best friend comes before me in my public capacity for the city of Central Falls, do I have to recuse? How many people think, yeah, if my best friend comes before me, I've got to recuse? How many say, no, I do not, if my friend has to recuse? How many say, I'm not here to answer your questions, you're here to answer mine, just tell me. That would be me at any time, right? Did you have a question?
No, I said, I see that one.
Yes, right, that would be me at anything I've ever been to in my life. Here's the scoop. If your best friend appears before you in your public capacity for the city of Central Falls, you are not required by the Code of Ethics to recuse. Can you imagine the job of the Ethics Commission trying to assign some sort of a value to your friendship with somebody? It's not like family. You can say family is family is family. How would they even do it? Would they say, oh, did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to practices or rehearsals? Do you text twice a minute, twice a decade? It's impossible. But remember that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety? If someone in your family, if a friend has a matter before you in your public capacity for Central Falls, it's an excellent opportunity for you to say, you know what, I know I don't have to recuse. It's not a family member, it's just a friend. But if I do participate, it could carry with it an appearance of impropriety. I want to avoid that. I'm just going to recuse. Do you have to do that? No, you do not. Should you do that? Depends who you ask. Tonight you got me, and I say, yeah, I think you should. Okay. So, sermon over for now. Who are your business associates? Remember I said you can't take official action in your capacity as a public servant if it's going to directly financially impact, for better or worse, your business associate. The code defines business associate as persons or entities with whom you are joined to achieve a common financial objective. Well, that is not a super helpful definition as far as I'm concerned. But let's look at some examples to make it easier to understand. If you have a business, your business partners are your business associates. Fairly obvious, right? People you've hired are your business associates. Think attorney, accountant, realtor, contractor, you get the idea. The Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship is one of business associates. And this next one is really important. People forget it all the time. You ready? If there is a business or an organization, and this includes not-for-profits, okay? If you are an officer or serve on the board of directors,
regardless of whether you get paid to do so, whether it's profit or for-profit. You are a business associate, not only of the organization, but of the other officers, the other members of the board of directors. Does this mean you cannot be a member of the board of directors or an officer of a private organization? No, it does not mean that. What it means is, if you are, just be aware of potential conflicts, okay? If another officer or another member of the board of directors comes before you, there'll be a conflict and you sit that one out, okay? And if you ever have a question about whether or not you need to sit something out, you can call us, all right? Moving on. Now, business associate relationships do not necessarily remain ongoing forever. People come and go throughout our lives. There are different relationships. I want you to know what the Ethics Commission looks at when trying to determine whether or not a business associate relationship exists. I can't explain this here, so I'm just ignoring it. I hope you will too. They're going to ask 3 questions. Are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions? Right? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Maybe the work between them is finished, but one still owes the other money. Is there an anticipated future relationship between these parties? You don't need a yes to all 3. A yes to any one of those questions is going to suggest strongly that you have a business associate relationship with someone, right? Let's say that somebody says, well, this person is my accountant, but the taxes were done in April and I've already paid her for this year and we're in November, so that's not my business associate. Oh, really? How long has this person been your accountant? 17 years. You gonna hire her next year? Yes, I am. Well, guess what? It's your business associate. So I used your realtor as an example. Let's say you sold your house in 2019 and you used a realtor and hopefully got more than you were asking for the sale price. You had the closing. All the funds have been distributed. You've been living happily ever after in your new home since with no plans to use that realtor or any other realtor. And that realtor comes before you from 7 years ago in your public capacity. Barring some other relationship governed by the code, like it's not your nephew, probably not your business associate anymore, right? The work between you's done. But let's say your house is for sale now. You used a realtor. You've accepted an offer and the closing's in 3 weeks. And your realtor comes before you in your public capacity. Stop. That is your business associate. You've got an ongoing business associate relationship. Even if the matter before you has nothing to do with the sale of a house or the person being a realtor. It's the relationship. It's a business associate. All you gotta do is recuse and say, I'm out on this one. I have a conflict of interest. Okay? I know this is a lot of stuff, but catch what you can. It's not important to memorize this. I have been with the Ethics Commission for 8 years, and I still have my nose in this book on the regular, because it's just complicated stuff. And quite frankly, it can be very boring, but it's super important, so that's why we have to go through it. Okay. Think of a conflict of interest as a situation where your public duties and your private life intersect. That's a conflict of interest. And I said no test at the end, but if you leave here with anything in the front of your mind, make it this. Ready? It is not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It doesn't violate the code of ethics to have a conflict of interest, said the woman with 31 first cousins. I kid you not. It's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and manage your conflict. We help people do that all the time. So, do I have a conflict of interest? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable, more than conceivable, less than certain, that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, to my family or household member, to my business associate, to a business by which I'm employed? Ask yourself, even if there's no financial impact, is a family member, a household member, a business associate, or a business by which I'm employed a party to or participating in this particular matter that's being discussed? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest you must recuse from any participation in that matter. So you might notice that the term household members in this slide and in the last slide, that's because under the nepotism provisions of the Code of Ethics, another big one that we're gonna look at in a moment. If someone lives in your household, that is conflict of interest territory for you, regardless of whether you are related to that person by blood, marriage, or adoption. Recusing is very easy. We ask you to complete what's called a statement of conflict of interest form, sometimes called a recusal form. My bet is that Lorraine has piles of these, or the clerk's office has piles of these. Alberto, right? Yeah, you didn't have them, sorry. I didn't mean to panic you. If you don't have any in the building, they're easy to get. You can download one from our system. You can call us and we'll send you one. The important thing is, don't not recuse because you don't have the form. Just recuse. We'll worry about the form after that, okay? It's one page, very, very easy. And after you fill it out, you submit the original to your appointing authority or your supervisor, or between the two of you decide who's going to send us a copy. We do keep these. We have them on file. And sometimes people call and say, do you have a recusal form submitted by so-and-so? I know they had a conflict of interest, and if we look it up, it usually kind of quiets them on their, allegation or potential allegation. Nepotism. I love this slide, and if nepotism exists, my brothers will root it out. How ironic, right? Okay, as someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in any manner as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that any person in your family or a household member is a party or participant, or will derive direct monetary gain, or suffer a direct monetary loss, or somehow obtain an employment advantage by virtue of your participation. The Code's prohibitions against nepotism apply regardless of whether, for example, your family member, the most qualified candidate for that position that's pending in town right now, that you're supposed to make a decision on and help hire, objectively, most qualified candidate, if it's gonna happen, it's gotta happen without your participation, right? Also, the policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism is premised on the recognition. It's just really, really hard for anybody to be truly objective on a matter that's going to impact someone in their family. Do we think you can do it? Maybe, probably, not the point. We remove from you any obligation of having to defend yourself after making a decision that's going to impact someone in your family by just taking it off the table. We're going to keep you out of it. And one more time, I'll hit you with that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding the appearance of impropriety. Some examples of nepotism, not an exhaustive list, but this will get you thinking about it. Hiring someone in your family or household is nepotism, as is awarding a contract to someone in your family or household. Any decision regarding a family or household member's property is nepotism, as is appointing someone in your family or household to a position, like on a board or a commission. Also, participating in a disciplinary matter if someone in your family or household's employment is at risk. You're going to stay out of anything impacting family members in your job. Sometimes people in the same family do work in the same town, and that's more of like, advanced ethics where we talk about how people can do that. For now, just keep in mind that you can't make decisions impacting family members, but if a family member has an opportunity to work in the same town as you, same city as you, and but you're having nothing to do with that decision of whether they get hired, give us a call and we'll talk about it and see what you have to be careful of. Okay, still in nepotism. You may not participate in the supervision, evaluation, appointment, classification, promotion, transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or your household. Nor can you delegate that task to your subordinate, to someone who answers to you. So if you can't hire your niece as a paid intern for the city next summer, you can't ask someone who answers to you to do it, because it's as though you did it, right? Okay. Recusal. I get asked all the time, all right, I recuse. Do I have to leave the room? Do I have to leave the building? What's the story? Recusal does not mean that a public official must leave the room if it's an open meeting, but I'll tell you right now, that is best practice. You ought to do it. If a public body is in executive or private session, think about it. Once you've recused, you really have no right to be in the room as any other member of the public, and absolutely leave the room. Let me tell you about this leaving the room after recusing. City council's meeting, someone has a conflict of interest, they sign a recusal form, they say, I'm not taking part in this, I'm gonna go sit in the front row. Can you do that? You sure can, right? You're sitting in the front row, minding your own business, and you decide to text someone at home, or text your house and say, anybody need anything at CVS? I'll stop on the way home, let me know. While you're innocently sending that text, one of your colleagues who didn't recuse is going to get a text from someone in their family saying, Uncle Joe is out of the hospital, call me later, all is well, I'll fill you in. My phone's gonna ring the next morning at 8:31 with someone who was at that meeting who's gonna say, I wanna file a complaint. That person recused and they went right to the front row and texted somebody else on the council who texted them back, and that person participated, I'm sure of it. When I tell you you can't make this stuff up, the only thing that I made up is I didn't get the call. A colleague did for them, and I don't know if it was somebody texting CVS or what, there were texts involved. So do yourself a favor, if you recuse, step out of the room, come back when the matter's over. You don't have to, but think about my story. Okay, contracts. No person subject to the Code of Ethics may enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless the contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all the proposals considered and the contracts awarded. Let me tell you how this one might come into play. Let's say that somebody works for the Department of Corrections, has a state job with the DOC, and in the wintertime has a little side hustle plowing snow. Has a little side hustle plowing snow. In and of itself, not a problem, okay? What that person can't do is go to whoever is in charge of hiring snow removal for the Department of Corrections and say, you don't need to put this out for bid or a request for proposal. I can plow the snow here on my own time. I know the place well, I've been doing this for years, I'll give you a really fair price, so let's skip the middleman and you can hire me. That would be a very wrong thing for that person to try and do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person can't put in, if a request for proposal is issued, they might want to call the Ethics Commission first to see if there's any other potential conflicts there. But you just can't enter into a contract with a state or municipal agency unless it's been put out to bid. There are some exceptions, like attorneys and psychologists and certain professions that there's an exception. Call us if you have a question about that particular matter. Secondary employment, sometimes called moonlighting. A number of us might have a second job in addition to our state or municipal position, especially if you are an elected or appointed official and have a regular job. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not accept secondary employment that does either or both of the following. The first thing that other job can't do is impair your independence of judgment with respect to your municipal responsibilities, okay? Nor may that other job require or induce you to disclose confidential government information that you acquired during the course of your official duties. So a number of people that want to maybe get a second job will ask the Ethics Commission for a formal advisory opinion. We're going to get to those momentarily. And I want you to know what the Ethics Commission looks at if they're trying to determine whether or not you can take that second job. They're going to look at the nexus between your public duties and the job that you want to take on the side, see how closely they're related to see if that might be a problem. Any work that you do in a second job has to be completed outside of your regular hours for your public job and without the use of public resources. Okay, you're not going to set up a dog walking business and use this city hall address as your touch base and your email, your public email for people to get in touch with you. You also cannot appear before your own agency. We'll talk more about that. Any work you do in that second job has to be conducted outside of areas over which you have decision-making jurisdiction. It's part of your municipal duties. And this next one's a bummer, but it is the way it is. You may not use your public position to solicit business or customers for your private endeavor. And people might say, you know, my sister owns a flower shop, and my nephew has a bakery, and when brides-to-be go into my sister's flower shop to maybe do business with her to buy flowers, she has her son's cards there to say, if you haven't picked a wedding cake baker yet, give my son a try. That's private industry. It's not public. We're public servants, so the rules are a little bit different. So that's that. Hopefully this comes as no surprise to anyone. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not use or disclose for financial gain confidential information acquired during the course of your official duties. Please keep confidential information just that. Okay, hot off the presses, the gift rule. The most popular topic of the Code of Ethics year-round. Okay, everybody wants to know about gifts. And this is a new rule. The amount is new. So, public officials and employees are prohibited from accepting a single gift valued at more than $50 or multiple gifts with an aggregate value of more than $150 in a calendar year from an interested person, subject to certain exceptions. So that's important. I'm going to have to tell you what an interested person is. But first I will tell you this. Prior to January 1st of this year, that $50 limit was what? $25. And that $150 limit was $75. In September, there were public hearings before the Ethics Commission on proposals to change the gift rule. Some said, do away with it completely, it should be $0. Kind of nice in theory, but if somebody takes a bottle of water that someone, an interested person gave them, they could be in trouble. This $50 amount was suggested, apparently at the time the $25 amount was set. $25 meant $25 then, but $25 then is now like $43. So it was rounded to 50. So the new gift rule amount is $50, okay? Now, what's an interested person? An interested person can mean either or both of two things. The first thing, and this one probably pertains more to us, a person, business, or other entity, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, that has a direct financial interest in a decision that the gift recipient either makes or is empowered to participate in making as part of their official duties. That's an interested person, okay? Someone has a matter before the planning board in town and wants to, it's coming up on the next agenda and wants to gift each member of the planning board, I don't know, gift cards to a local restaurant valued at $100 each. No. That's an interested person. You cannot accept a gift valued at over $50 from an interested person. The other definition of interested person is kind of more for people in the General Assembly in Rhode Island. A person, business, or other entity, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, that's a registered lobbyist or engages a registered lobbyist or lobbying firm, okay? Lobbyists would be considered interested persons by nature. They're lobbying, they're asking for things from you that you get to decide whether to do. Okay. There are some exceptions to the gift rule. They're in the Code of Ethics, just a couple basically. A valid campaign contribution is not a gift, right? There are campaign rules, there are board of election rules that you can address there. A gift from someone in your family would be an exception, okay? That sort of thing. So, transactions with subordinates. I'm just going to pull my copy of this. Because even though I should have this memorized, I almost do, it's kind of blocking my vision. Transactions with subordinates. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not engage In a financial transaction, let's define that. What do we mean by financial transaction? Private employment or consulting, giving or receiving loans or monetary or charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. That would be your subordinate, right? So Jason Grammett, the executive director of the Ethics Commission, can't come in to the office one afternoon and say to the people that work for him, I am painting my house, the inside of my house this weekend, and I'd love to have a little painting party. Anybody available to come help me paint this weekend? He can't do that. We're his subordinates, okay? Now, let's look at some exceptions. Exceptions include financial transactions in the ordinary course of a regular commercial business or occupation. Let's say that one of the investigators in my office works for an actual painting business, a company. Jason can hire that company, it's an actual business. And if Pete, who works there, happens to be the person to go out, I don't think he would be, that would be an exception. Another exception is if the subordinate is the one to initiate the financial transaction. I go up to Jason, Jason, I hear you're doing some painting this weekend. I got nothing but time on Saturday. I'm happy to help out. I probably wouldn't say that, but I'm his subordinate, so if I volunteer, that's an exception. Then there are certain charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official or governing body of the state or municipality, which is why the governor can invite state employees, such as myself, to contribute to the United Way each year, because it's a charitable event sponsored by the governor, who's the highest official of the state. Don't worry about memorizing this stuff, just be familiar with it, okay? No person subject to the Code of Ethics shall solicit or request, directly or through a surrogate, political contributions from a subordinate over whom they exercise supervisory responsibilities, okay? So the boss can't come in and say, I've had it with politics in this state. That's it. I'm running for office. I'm going to be the best senator this state has ever seen. I could use some help. My friends, it's not easy to run a campaign. I am going to ask anybody to contribute whatever they can. No amount is too big or too small. Just put it here in this bucket. And, oh, by the way, reviews are next week, right? Your boss can't come and solicit campaign contributions from you, right? Now, there is a First Amendment right that we have to contribute to the campaign of our choice if we so choose. We just can't be asked to by someone who's our supervisor. The revolving door, there are a number of revolving door provisions in the Code of Ethics. They're not real popular with people, they don't like them. But I want to tell you, without going into too many of them, why we have the revolving door. The purpose of revolving door provisions in the Code of Ethics is to prevent government employees and public officials from unfairly profiting from or otherwise trading upon the contacts, associations, and special knowledge that they acquired during their tenure as public servants. Okay, there's usually a 1-year cooling off period. Let's look at an example from the Code. No elected or appointed official may accept any appointment or election that requires approval by the body of which that official is or was a member to any position which carries with it financial benefit. And this prohibition continues while the person's in office or while they're employed there and for 1 year after they leave. Now, the Ethics Commission can give its approval for an exception to this rule, but they have to be satisfied that if they don't allow that exception, it will result in a substantial hardship, not to the person who wants the job, but to the agency trying to fill the position. Let's look at an example. Let's say that a city council has an attorney on it. Happens all the time, that is not a problem. There are attorneys on city councils. Let's say in one particular city, an attorney leaves the city council, no nefarious reason, maybe didn't run again, right? Or maybe just had something in their personal life that they needed to tend to. In any event, 6 months go by. The attorney's off the city council. 6 months later, the city council finds itself having to hire an attorney, not the solicitor, for whatever reason, can't do it, to work on a particular project. So somebody at the city council innocently says, let's hire Joanne. She's a lawyer. We know Joanne. Joanne knows us. She was on the city council. She's familiar with the project because we've been talking about it for so long. Let's hire Joanne to do this job. Joanne cannot take that job because she's only been off the city council for 6 months. She would violate the revolving door. But let's say the city council really is hell-bent on hiring Joanne for this. They might say to Joanne, why don't you ask the Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion? Tell them that it's a hardship if we can't hire you. Okay, I'll try. Joanne says that the city council would like me to tell the Ethics Commission that of the 12,000 lawyers in the state of Rhode Island, if they can't hire me for this, it will be a substantial hardship. The Ethics Commission might say, oh, did you interview people? Well, no, we didn't put it out or anything like that. Oh, you didn't interview any lawyers, you just want to hire Joanne. So chances are strong that will be a big no, okay? Alrighty. As a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency of which you are a member or by which you are employed or before any other agency for which your agency has appointing authority. So in Central Falls, does the city council appoint, say, the planning board or the zoning board?
Well, we approve or confirm appointments being made by the mayor.
Okay. So that means that as a member of the city council, you may not appear before the city council or before a board over which you have appointed authority or confirmation. Now, hang on. You may not serve as an expert witness for your own agency, and these prohibitions continue for 1 year until after you're out of public office. So, what do I mean by representation when I say you may not represent yourself before your own agency? Representation means participation in the presentation of evidence or arguments before an agency for the purpose of trying to influence the judgment of that agency in your favor or in favor of someone else that you might be representing before them. Now, there is something called a hardship exception, where the Ethics Commission might allow you to represent yourself before your own agency or before an agency over which you have appointing authority. To get a hardship exception, you must request an advisory opinion. Let me tell you where this has sometimes come into play. Let's say that someone is on the zoning board and they want to put a shed in their backyard. And so the zoning board member in his backyard finds a place where he wants to put the shed and then realizes, you know what? I'm going to have a problem with the setback ordinance in my town. So I need a variance so I can put a shed where a shed ought to be. What's a zoning board member who wants a shed to do? He's going to go to the Ethics Commission and say, hi, I'm on the zoning board. I would like to seek a variance from the zoning board so I can put a shed where I want to in my backyard. Can I have one of those hardship exceptions? And chances are strong, as the Ethics Commission has done at least 4 times since I started there, they're going to say to that zoning board member, sure, we're going to give you a hardship exception to go before your zoning board to ask for a variance so you can put a shed in your backyard. But, hear me now and hear me well, you're not voting on it. And you're going to let everyone at that meeting know you got this advisory opinion. So, guy goes along his way. It's 1 year later. Same guy, same zoning board. Buys a piece of property in town and says, this is wonderful. I'm going to develop this property. I'm going to put a commercial building on it. I'm going to rent it to tenants, and I'm going to make a whole lot of money as a landlord. First stop, the zoning board, because I got to take care of a few things on this project. Oh wait, I'm still on the zoning board. I'm not supposed to go before the zoning board. But the Ethics Commission was so nice last year when I wanted to put my shed in the backyard. I'm going back. I'm going to ask for another hardship exception. Hi, Ethics Commission. It's me, zoning board guy. The shed is up. I could use another hardship exception though, because this time I bought a piece of property in town. I want to develop it. I want to put a commercial building on it. I want to rent it out and make a lot of money. What do you say? How about that hardship exception? I don't think so. There is a big difference between wanting to go before your own agency to put a shed in your own backyard to keep the grill and the kids' bikes dry, and wanting to go before your own agency to launch this commercial venture for no other purpose than to make money. So that's the hardship exception. Complaints, we do get them at the Ethics Commission. They are rarely filed by one's friends, I can assure you. We're not going to go too deeply into the complaint process. I have one slide. Here's what I want you to know. Anybody can file a complaint with the Ethics Commission against a person who is subject to the Code of Ethics, right? It's got to be on a form provided by us. It's got to be signed under oath, which means we do not accept anonymous complaints. Okay, it's got to name the individual who allegedly violated the Code of Ethics. We call that person the respondent. Identify the respondent's public office or public position. Detail with specificity which acts allegedly violated the code. This document is not public unless and until the executive director accepts it. The complainant's not a party. The state of Rhode Island will handle prosecuting the complaint. And a complaint before the Ethics Commission is civil in nature. It's not criminal in nature. The Ethics Commission does not put people in prison. Okay, now that's not to say that somebody facing a civil complaint with the Ethics Commission might not be in some hot water with the Department of Attorney General or the United States Attorney's Office for the very same conduct. But before us, it's civil. And the Ethics Commission has the authority to impose a fine of up to $25,000 per violation. Does that happen every day? No, it does not. I'm sure it's happened in the history, but fines are just determined based upon the severity of the violation. Advisory opinions, that's the other half of my job and that of my colleague and friend Theodore Papa. Teddy and I probably draft 95% of the advisory opinions that leave the office. We want you to know what they are in case you need one sometime. The reason that people get an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission is for protection against a complaint being filed against them by action that they take in their official capacity. The time to do this, the time to get an advisory opinion is before you take official action, not after. Better to ask permission today than forgiveness tomorrow, right? Also, the Ethics Commission doesn't issue advisory opinions on stuff that's already happened. Prospective conduct only, okay? And it can't be a hypothetical because these opinions very much turn on the specific facts that support them. A hypothetical advisory, an advisory opinion issued based on a hypothetical doesn't help anyone. So, to get an advisory opinion, you mail, hand deliver, or email to the Ethics Commission a letter. It's got to have your signature and the information you see on your sheet. Name, phone number, email address. Tell me the nature of your office or your public employment. What are your duties? Describe the potential conflict and summarize the relevant facts as best you can. We're going to talk during this process, and you can't possibly know exactly everything you have to tell us. That's why we'll call, and I'll say, oh, you've been employed by the city for, you're presently employed by the city. When did you start? No right or wrong answer here. No right or wrong answer any time you have an advisory opinion. What you want is to find out, for better or worse, whether you can do the thing that you want to do. Okay? Now, after you submit your request, you're going to get a draft recommendation. It's going to say draft in big letters across the page, every page. They're usually 3 to 5 pages long. Reason it says draft, what I say on that document doesn't mean a thing unless and until a majority of the Ethics Commission votes to approve it, right? You are strongly encouraged to attend the Ethics Commission meeting at which your advisory opinion request will be considered. The Ethics Commission meets twice a month, usually once a month in the summer, always on a Tuesday morning, always at 9. And the advisory opinions are heard first, and it's very painless. Even if there's 3 or 4 advisory opinions on, people are usually out of there by 10:15. Okay? Yearly financial statements. We're closing the end, which is a good thing. A number of people have to file annual financial disclosure statements. If you need to, you're well aware of it because we know who needs to file, and you get those reminders and blue sheets from Michelle in the spring. These things are due the first Friday in April. There's a slide on that. they're due the first Friday in April ordinarily. So without going into the whole financial disclosure process, I want you to know why we have it. It's not to embarrass, annoy, or offend anyone. Financial disclosure helps ensure people acting in the public interest aren't using their public positions to further their private financial interests, right? They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making. They help further the public's confidence in government. And what's wrong with that? No one's gonna ask you how much money you have in the bank. No one's gonna ask you what you paid for your house. Those are not the types of questions. They are gonna ask you if you're employed and by whom, to just identify a potential conflict of interest, right? So you're not taking part in matters impacting your employer. They might ask you, they will ask you, if you are an officer or serve as a member of the board of directors on a corporation or a company, because remember, that's a conflict of interest, not to serve the position, but you just can't take part in matters impacting those people. This is our contact information, which you are free to use at any time. And I will tell you that if you have a question and you say, well, I don't know if I want to get an advisory opinion, maybe I'll just call somebody over there and speak with an attorney or an investigator and ask my question. That might suffice for you, but only you can decide. Because what I tell you on the phone is informal. It's not binding on the Ethics Commission. If you want something formal in writing you can take to the bank, you're going to want to get one of those formal advisory opinions. Okay? This is where I invite people to ask questions. This is where I can feel people thinking one of two things. The first thing is, question. I don't even know half of what you just said. You just rambled through all this stuff. That's okay. You might not have a question now, but someday someone might give you a gift and you might say, I don't remember what she said, but I'm calling Lynn about gifts. I want to find out what that rule was. Other people say, I have a question, I don't want to ask it in front of 20 other people, which is why I will take my time getting my coat on. But I want to thank you for your attention. This is dry stuff, but it's important stuff. And I can tell when people are paying attention, and unless you're all professional actors, I really appreciate the grace and attention that you've shown me this evening. So with that, are there any questions? All righty. Well, stretch your legs. Thank you. My pleasure. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is
Thank you, ma'am.
Something by the motion, something Figueroa second. That's it. All say in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, this meeting concluded, TTC. Yeah, thank you.
I didn't want to get off.
My name is Lacey.
Pretty good. Good. You?
So, generally speaking, you may not participate in a budgetary line item that will directly financially impact a member of your family or household. This is in the next sections. That having been said, you may participate in a vote to approve or reject the budget as a whole, provided your family member is not going to be impacted any differently than anybody else. It's kind of a case by case now.
It's busier.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. Nice to see you.
I guess it takes 2 weeks. And, they may be.
Bring it to us. Bring it to us.
Actually, Okay.
Where's your opinion? Then we're not, or no, it's sponsored by.
Institution rise.
See,
Straight.
So, yeah, I didn't think we were going to start those contact.
My pleasure, thank you for attending. It's a long night for you. Okay, thank you.
The only thing I can do is by seeing one of the. Coordinated and staff members.